All right, today is Wednesday, the 9th of November. Just let me start by saying that all of you who are in this class should have gotten an email from me. I think it was on Monday, might have been Tuesday, I don't know. But what I did was I went and took the explanation of the Hot 7 test that we did last week, that it's about a 15-minute talk, and I made that private. And then when I went over and did the test for you, I made that private. You should have gotten emails that basically, had like a box in there. And if you clicked on the box, you should have been able to see it. Now, if any of you didn't get that, you want to email me, that's fine. I can send it out again. At least one person did email me and say, hey, I never got this. So just let me know. All right. So today we are going to begin the last portion of the book. So we're going to go over chapter 19 of the Murach text. All right, which is an introduction to databases. Probably, at least most of the stuff in here, I'm not going to say you're going to find it easy. I would never say that. All right. But hopefully it'll be intuitive when we start working with it, and the stuff that we go over will make at least some sense to you. Now, I had originally said attached to this email is an SQL file that we'll use. Well, and I forgot to attach it, so I sent it also. You do have it here. All right. I'm going to have you download some software in just a little bit, and I also uninstalled the software from my machine. But when I do the install, it might look a little different than yours. I'll explain why that's the case in just a moment. All right. So my hope is in the first hour, we can go over everything that's in chapter 19 and take a break. And then afterwards, take a look at the file that I sent you, do the download of the software that I want you to use, and just get started looking at the stuff in here. Not at all in any depth or breadth of coverage, but just get started. All right. And if you feel overwhelmed, I'm not saying you do, but if you feel overwhelmed by the stuff, really and truly don't let it bother you, because what we're going to do is tomorrow I'm probably going to send you another thing, and it's going to be a bigger file with more stuff in it, but we're going to go over a ton of examples together. All right. So like I said, just give it a chance if you would. All right. Again, there's no class on Friday. And what is due this Sunday, is the chapter 17 written test, the chapter 18 written test, and the chapter 18 link song project that we went over yesterday. I'm asking you to reproduce what I did yesterday. All right. And again, that video should be out on my YouTube channel. All right, so let's get going then. I'm going to just start this up. Now, I don't want to read a lick to you, but again, I think I mentioned to you the other day, and I'm going to say it again. At a minimum, we're going to cover chapters 19 and 22. I'll probably also go over the material in chapters. Let me say it again in case I screwed it up. At a minimum, we'll go over chapter 19 today, and we will go over chapter 22, because those have concepts that we're going to need to use in the last program we're going to do together. I will probably also go over chapters 20 and 21. Much of the material that's in there, there's a good chance you're going to find it confusing. I still find it confusing. All right. So as far as homework and whatever, don't worry about that right now. Okay. We'll talk about that next week. All right. Okay. Let's see. Come on. Oh, I'm clicking the next page and it's just not going there. Let's try this again. Oh, I did this the other day, so let me get back into the software. Sometimes this software, I've got a thing called Red Shelf, and they give me basically a PDF to work with. I've got a hard copy of the book and an electronic copy. And for some reason, sometimes with the electronic thing, it just freezes. So let's see if I can bring this up. It's thinking about it. Now, just so you know, I'm just throwing this at you right now. My hope is that everybody who's in this class come spring is going to take the AWD1000 class with me, the Web Development Technologies class. Just as an FYI, these are the two books you're going to use for that class. It's Murach's HTML5 and CSS4 fourth edition, or CSS3 fourth edition, and Murach's JavaScript and jQuery fourth edition. Yeah, there's two books. All right. Okay. So let me jump into this. Now, at a minimum, you will have to do the chapters 19 and 22 written tests. So you probably want to listen, of course, to the stuff that's going to be discussed in here today. But some of the stuff, especially at the beginning, when they talk about client server systems in here for the first 4 or 5 pages, we're not going to talk much about that. But I believe that some of the questions on the written test will talk about that. All right. We're going to concentrate on these two things, the introduction to relational databases, and I'm going to give you my own take on this, and how to use SQL to work with relational databases. All right. So remember, one of the things that we talked about the other day is we're getting to where we're talking about data persistence. We did take a quick look at some work with file IO. We went over the chapter. We didn't really do many of the examples, but we looked at one of the examples that were in the book. And you had a written test on that. But most of the time, when you want to save data, you're going to end up using a database or multiple databases. So as it says in there, you need to understand what a relational database is and how to work with it. And that's what this chapter is about. I will tell you, there are more, there are different kinds of databases other than just relational databases. All right. Two or three of the best known relational databases are MySQL, sometimes called MySQL, Oracle, and Microsoft's SQL Server, the one that they're going to basically be talking about in here. Now, the one we're going to be using as we start this, the one we're going to be using is MySQL. And you might think, well, if we're going to be talking about Microsoft SQL Server, why are we going over another one? Because it's got a really nice GUI interface that I think is going to make it easier for you to understand. And whether you're working with MySQL or SQL Server, the concepts are the same. The queries are virtually, when you query the database, they're virtually going to be identical. So you won't have to worry about it. All right, so let's jump in. And the first thing they talk about in here are client server systems. All right. And what we're going to do in a few minutes when we go in and download some software is you are going to be able to use your computer as both a client and a server. This entire semester, and probably for as long as you've had your computer, you've been using it as a client. And what I mean is, as an example, if here's CNN, I was looking about the election stuff yesterday. But if I go in and let's just say I go to Google. So I come in here and I type in google.com. You've seen this before. You know what this is about. The point though is this. I am the client right here. I am the person putting something into an address bar and hitting the enter key. When I do that, I end up sending what's called an HTTP or a hypertext transfer protocol request that goes out to Google. And Google has servers someplace in the world that they go and they respond. So they send me back a hypertext transfer protocol response to what I asked. The point though is this. I'm the client, Google is the server. All right. And that's usually how you do things. But what we're going to get into now, when we download this software in just a bit, is you're going to be able to use your computer as both a client and a server. The advantage of doing that is you can go and you can develop things on your own machine and you can test them on your own machine before you release them to other people or show them to other people or whatever. That's the advantage. The disadvantage is if your machine is acting as a client and a server, anything you do that's server side can only be seen on your machine because it's your machine that's acting as the client and the server. All right. So as it says here, the clients are usually the PCs, that you have on desktops throughout a company. All right. Then there's a network that either physically, connects things or wirelessly connects things. All right. And there's things like network cards, NIC cards, hubs, routers. I'm not at all a hardware guy. I understand what's happening, but if you asked me to go in and basically be able to wire this stuff I couldn't do it. All right. So then they say the server is a computer that basically will service clients. And that's about as easy a way to put it as possible. Now, when I went out there and I put in google.com, it probably went to one of the quote regular unquote Google servers. All right. And it gave me back that information that you just saw. However, if I go in there and I decide I want to query and I go out and I type in structured query language like that, if I put that in and I hit enter like this, all right, the chances are what just happened right there is the main servers that serviced me when I started took that request and pushed it off to another server, and that other server answered the request, sent it back to the first server that sends it back to me. You can see how fast all that stuff happens. The point is, the more complex the application, the better the chance that you're going to have several layers of these servers in here that they're talking about. All right. Okay. Now, the other thing too is just so you hear these terms and maybe you've heard them before, maybe you haven't, but they talk about a LAN and they talk about a WAN. With a LAN, typically, not always, but typically with a LAN, a local area network, the machines are all either inside of the same building or maybe even inside of the same room. They may be physically connected to one another, but somehow there is a connection. For instance, at Rankin Technical College in Wentzville, we have two computer labs. To my knowledge, all of, both those rooms are set up as LANs, as local area networks. All the computers are connected to one another. All right. On the other hand, all right, there is a non-physical connection between the servers at the St. Louis campus and the servers at the Wentzville campus. Why is that? Because the two campuses are approximately 40 miles apart. You wouldn't be running cable underground for 40 miles. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. So what we have there is a wide area network, all right, where the stuff isn't physically connected to one another. It's not in the same location. All right. Now, we talk a little bit about that in the class you'll take in spring in the web development technologies class, but this isn't a hardware program. All right. The only reason I'm bringing that up is again, that stuff or may not, that stuff may or may not be on your written test. I don't know. So they show here an example of a simple client server system where they say the network that basically is the cloud. All right. And you probably already know this, but if you took that where it says network there and you replace network as an example with GitHub, it's kind of what we're doing. You get done with your work, you push it out to GitHub, which is basically a cloud server, and it holds your information. Now, is there a database server involved in that? I don't know enough about GitHub that I could answer that question. The other thing too, and it's interesting that they still show this picture the way that they do, because really when you think about it today, as an example, I voted yesterday. I know you're all proud of me, but the point is, I went out and the precinct that I vote at opened up at 6. So I got there at 5:45 in the morning. I was the fourth person in line. All right. But the reason I'm telling you this is while I was waiting, because I had to wait out there outside for about 15 minutes, I went and got on my phone and I went out through Outlook and I checked to see if I had any emails from the night before. And I did. So I answered one. What the reason I'm telling you this is they make these clients in here look like, in my opinion, like these are all, I don't know, desktop or laptop computers. Today, you're finding more and more that, as an example, 50% of the people who use the internet are not using a laptop or a desktop. In fact, it's over 50. The last number I heard was closer to 60. 60% of people are using either a tablet or their phone. So you can bring in tablets and phones into this system as well, is what I'm telling you, because they can be clients. All right. So I don't want to read to you. I've already talked to you about what clients are, what servers are, and what networks are. All right. And again, you may be asked some questions about this stuff, a little bit at least. All right, on your written test. All right, so let's go on. All right, so those were the hardware components. Now they're going to talk about the software components. All right, now, again, this is not a class in the information technology program that Mr. Groharing and Mr. Parsons and Mr. Anderson and Mr. Corrigan, etc., teach in. It's not a hardware program, but you should at least understand what an operating system is. All right. An operating system is basically what exists between you and the computer itself, and it manages the communication between the two. What I used to do when I would explain, all right, an operating system is I would come in here and I would type in, for example, no, I don't want to do, I don't want the, let's do images. So when you see this right, actually, even though it's Target, this is the way I used to explain an operating system. All right. And I'd say, if you look on the outside, that's you, the user. If you look on the inside, that's the computer itself. If you look at the white circle that's in the middle of the two, that's the operating system. So it's kind of the go-between between you and the computer. It is software, but it's software that basically controls the hardware. That's all I want to say about that. Now, what we're concerned with is this. We are going to be talking about database management systems. And again, as I already mentioned to you, three of the most popular database management systems are Microsoft's SQL Server, Oracle, and MySQL. All right. All of them have free versions. Now, MySQL used to be an independent thing, so nobody really owned it. All right. There was somebody in charge of it, but it was free to everybody, etc. It got so big and so powerful, etc. And so many people were using it that Oracle bought them. They still offer a free service on there, and Microsoft still offers a free SQL server on there. All right. The DBMS, or the database management system, it does just that. It manages the database. All right. All right. Just a couple terms because you have to hear these. All right. In not so much this semester, not even so much next semester, but your last 2 semesters that you're in the program here, you're going to be talking like crazy about the concept, something that's called an API. And an API, it's an acronym that stands for Application Program Interface. And basically what it is it allows two things to talk to one another. Typically, it's two pieces of software, to talk to one another. All right. And there's APIs all over the place that do all sorts of things. I'm not going to bring them up, but for instance, in the class I'm teaching in the afternoon, we're doing two programs right now. We just finished one yesterday and started a new one yesterday. In the first one, we're using what's called the Open Weather Map API. So the students went and they're creating their own interface and they're clicking a button. They'll put in something like, for example, St. Louis. Then they'll click a button and it'll go out to the internet and out to the Open Weather Map API, and it'll find the current weather conditions for St. Louis. All right. And, so that's an example of an API. You can build your own APIs or you can use external APIs. The second program that we're doing, the one that we'll continue on today, it's a similar kind of thing. But again, you've got a search box, so a text box, and you type in there, for example, Harry Potter. And then you type a button or you click a button that says search, and it'll go out to the Open Movie Database and it will go and find all the Harry Potter movies. So it'll put a list of them out there. All right. And then you can click on any movie and find out specifics about that movie. All right. Well, in much the same way, we're going to be doing not exactly that, but we're going to be working with databases. A database is a repository of information. I'm going to very quickly, bring this up here and just show you something. What I'm saying now, hopefully it'll at least make some sense to you. And if it doesn't right now, then hopefully soon it will. All right. So if you imagine sitting at your computer keyboard, and if you are at the computer right now, and probably you are, if you look at it, you'll notice that you've got a bunch of alphabetic letters, and you've got a bunch of numbers, and you've got a bunch of special characters, and a space bar, etc. You get all that stuff. But if we concentrate right now on your letters and on your numbers and on those special symbols like asterisk, ampersand, etc., those are characters. All right. And that's really anything on the keyboard. So why am I even telling you this? All right. There's a reason if you just bear with me for a second. All right. If I go and grab, let's say that I decide that what I'm going to type in, I'm going to remove this in a second, but I type in my name. That's a series of characters that together have a meaning. That would be my first name, also known as my first name field. So a field is one or more related characters. All right. Now, if I decide I'm going to put more information in here, so I put in here my last name, and I put down, let's say, my job and where I work, etc. That's all information about me. All right. So that would typically be referred to as a record of information. So that would be one or more related fields. All right. Now, if we brought the other instructors that are here at Rankin, so if I came in here and I added more to this, so for instance, if I came in and added my boss, Charles Corrigan, and I said IT instructor, etc. So let me copy this. All right. And I could put in as many of these as I wanted to. All right. But what this would represent then would be what's referred to as a table of information. And finally, when I put a bunch of these tables together, that's a database. So this is where we're going to in here. All right. We're going to be going in and we will start by creating a database. And then inside of that database, we will create a table. Inside of that table, we will create one or more records. Each one of those records will contain one or more fields. Each one of those fields will contain one or more characters. All right. And again, I'm giving it to you at a really the airplane view. So you're looking at it down from 35,000 feet. All right. A couple more terms just so you hear these. And don't worry about memorizing them or anything else. But when we start really talking about databases, we're going to be starting to talk about different database commands, just so you know. And we're going to have two different kinds. We're going to have what are called data definition language, or DDL commands, and there's three of them. They are create, alter, and drop. And then we're going to talk about data manipulation commands. Right? And there are really four of those. All right. And they will be, in fact, this is, let's see, alter. Okay. Actually, I'm going to get the create out of here. All right. Don't worry about it right now. We're going to get to it in just a minute. But these are basically going to be insert, update, delete, and what we will refer to as select. All right, we'll leave that create in there for now. Now, why am I even taking the time to tell you this stuff? What you're going to see by the end of the class period today, I sent you this file, and in that file, we have both a database, and that database consists of a table, and that table will have about 25 records in it, and each record will have about 5 fields in it. And what you're going to start to learn in the upcoming weeks is how to go and work with what's called the schema of the database. And that's going to let us do this stuff. And then we're going to learn how to be able to go in and manipulate the stuff that's in the database. And we'll use this stuff. All right. And there'll be more. I'm going to add a couple more things to this a little bit later, but I'm just throwing a few things at you in here. Now, approximately, believe it or not, approximately 50 years ago, there was a mathematician who basically set up all the framework for what we today refer to as SQL, the structured query language. SQL has been around literally for 50 years. It might even be a couple more years than that. It was right around 1970. All right. Now, in the 70s, okay, just to show you how old I am, in the 70s, I graduated from high school. And when I did, um, the last year that I was there was when they brought their first computer in. And the computer, I'm going to guess, I couldn't really tell you, but I'm going to guess it was somewhere around 30 feet long and probably about 3 feet wide. I couldn't even believe they could carry it into the school and where they put it, etc. And it had less power than your phone has today, for example. All right. What I'm trying to get to is structured query language has been around for 50 years. Think about 50 years ago, how computers were. Not too much stuff that basically came out 50 years ago in the computer field is still active today. One of those things that is still active today is structured query language, or SQL. All right. So it's still being used. All right. I think we talked about this. I do want to mention, just so you hear the term, that what we're going to be working with in SQL, we're going to be working with a couple of different DBMSs like they show here, database management system. But what you're going to see in a couple pages is that really when you work with these database management systems, they're a little more than that. They're actually what's called a relational database management system, or an RDBMS. All right, so just keep that in mind. You're going to see it in just a couple pages. All right. Okay. The only other thing I want to mention in here is I mentioned before that if you go in, I gave you the example, I'm not going to go out there again, but you go into your address bar, you type in google.com, etc. All right. What you're doing is you're working on what's called the front end. That's what people see is the front end. What Google does in the background, as I mentioned, when you do a search and it might pass the information from one server to another server and then back to you, that's the back end. Why am I telling you that? Because next semester, when you take the AWD1000 class, the Web Development Technologies class, all right, that class is a front end class. When you take the class that'll probably, I think, run this summer, AWD1111, the one I'm teaching right now in the afternoon, which is database-driven web development 1, all right, that is a back-end class. So you learn both front end and back end while you're here. That's what I want to tell you about. So as it says, SQL is the structured query language. It's the standard language you use when you work with a relational database. All right. And again, COD, it was 70 if you look right there. I'm not going to read anything about it. All right. But he is known basically as the father of all this stuff, even though when he set it up, it was set up as a mathematical model, not so much as something that people were going to use to hold data. All right. But if you look here in this first paragraph, it says what they were trying to do, there were some other database types of things that were out there, but there was a lot of redundancy in data, which they talk about in here. All right. What we are going to be charged with is you can never totally eliminate redundant data, but we want to control redundant data and we want to minimize that as much as possible. All right. Now, I already mentioned to you what a table is, and they're going to talk about table organization. And I may or may not have shown you this before, but if I go out to Microsoft Excel and I just say that I want a blank workbook and I bring this up, all right? Well, what do we have here? Right here, I am in row 2 and I am in column B. All right, now I'm in column C of row 2, etc. What I'm trying to tell you is these are rows that go across. These are columns that go up and down. Who cares? You should, because these things that go up and down here, these are your fields that you're going to have in each one of the tables you create. The things that go across, those are the records that we're going to create. So for instance, if I came up with something like this, if I had like first name, and then I had last name, address, city, state, zip, and I'll just put in, a thing just so you see one. So again, my own stuff, and I'll put in Rankin's address, which is 751 Parr Road. All right, and that's in Wentzville, Missouri, and that's 63385. So I'm not trying to waste my time, and I'm certainly not trying to waste your time here. But again, what I'm trying to show you is when you look at this, all right, when we look at the stuff that's in here, what do we have? Well, right now, if we were to look at this as being a table for us, all right, we would have a table, and that table would have in it, all right, the table would have in it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields, and there's only one record in it as of right now. All right. And again, hopefully you can look at that. At least, like I said, at least it makes a little bit of sense to you. Let me grab this, get that out of there. And we'll put Wentzville here. Whoops. And we'll put Missouri here. All right. Hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense to you. Why? Why does this have to make sense to you? Because this is the kind of thing that we're going to be working with in just a little bit. So again, please be cognizant of the fact these going up and down, these are your fields. So we have a first name field, a last name field, an address field, a city field, a state field, and a zip code field. All right. And if I went and grabbed all this information, all right, and I copied this, but I came in here and, for example, said Charles, Corrigan, all right, and then I came down and I did Brock, Parsons, and I came down again and I did Chad, Grow-Herring. These are the people, and there's one more, there's Tom Anderson. But the point is now what you see in here, all right, what you see in here is now we've got, still have 6 fields, but we've got 4 records. One thing, hopefully at least, you're noticing in here is there's a bunch of redundant data, all right? So we'd like to try to minimize that data, and we're going to talk about how you do that in just a little bit. Okay, but I'm just trying to introduce you to some of the concepts. Now, how do you differentiate between two people that are in here? Well, you probably, your first inclination would be to say, well, they all have a different first name and a last name, and that's true. But what if Rankin decided to hire another instructor, and God forbid, but that instructor was named Jeff Scott? Then we'd have two people. There really would be no way of telling the difference between these two. And before you say, oh, that had never happened, let me just tell you that when I got hired at Rankin 6.5 years ago, there was a guy, I'm Jeffrey P. Scott, but there was a guy at the St. Louis campus named Jeffrey R. Scott. I did meet him. He left. He had been there for a while, but he went back into private industry. But the point is, I was constantly getting his mail. He was constantly getting my mail. All right. Well, you can say, well, we could do something like this, like have a social security number. You could do that. And then I could put in 111-22-3333, which is, of course, not my social security number, but you get the idea. And then I'd have a different one here and a different one here, etc. Yeah, we could do that. And this special thing that would differentiate me from Charles, from Brock, etc. This special field that we would put in to do that, that special field is referred to as a primary key. So a primary key is a unique record identifier. And I just showed you that. All right. Is it mandatory that you have a primary key in everything you do? The answer is actually no, it's not. But as you're going to find out, it makes a lot of sense to do that. All right. And again, I'm just trying to run through some of the stuff that's in here. So they mentioned a primary key. Now, this what I just showed you in here is a primary key. This wouldn't be a good thing to use because a primary key should be something that's known as unintelligible. What does that mean? Well, if somebody finds out my social security number, they can conceivably do a lot of damage to me. On the other hand, if instead of the social security number, I put in, let's just say, a Rankin ID, and let's just assume that my Rankin ID is 43210. Probably if somebody finds my Rankin ID, there's probably not going to be very much they can do with it. Like, with a social security number, you hear stories about people opening up different checking accounts or doing whatever, getting into somebody's personal information. That's not going to happen in here. So a primary key like this should be unintelligible, which means that if somebody finds it out, there's really not much, if anything, they can do with it. But when you think about this, let me go in here and add another column. All right. Technically, if I did, again, it wouldn't be a good idea to do this, but technically, right here, I could use either one of these fields as a primary key because my Rankin ID is different than Brock's rank an ID that's different than Chad's ID, etc. All right. Or I could use the social security number. I could use either one of these. Even though this wouldn't be a good one to use, I could conceivably use either one. All right. And the reason I'm telling you that is they mention in there that when you do that, and they'll talk about it in here someplace, then I've got two primary key candidates. All right. Usually one will stick out as the one you should use. Well, let's say that when we did this, we didn't have anything. We don't have a ranking number. We don't have a social security. Let's just assume for a second, we don't have any of this stuff. We just literally don't. All right. Then what you typically do, and this is what we're going to end up doing a lot of, is that you just make a special field and you call it ID. You just call it ID. And you set it up so that the first one is number one, then the second one is automatically number two, then the next one is automatically number 3 and 4, etc. You get the idea. So this is what we're going to be doing. And it's going to be important that you realize this idea of having a primary key that's just an ID. That's all it is. All right. It has no other special significance to it. All right. Jump back into where we were. There we go. Okay. Sometimes you need to make a primary key out of 2 different columns. Okay. And when you do that, it's called a composite primary key. All right. There's a few other things that's in here. I don't want to deluge you with so much information. Okay. But this is the kind of thing that we're going to create. In fact, after the break, this is the kind of thing we're going to look at. So when you look in here, 2 things should be apparent to you. Number 1, there are 4 fields. There is a field called product code. There is a field called description. There is a field called unit price. And there is a field called on-hand quantity. Most programming languages do not allow you to put spaces between field names. That's why product code like this is run together. All right. The other thing you should realize, really 2 more things. Number 1 is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16, if I counted right, rows or records in this table. So there are 4 fields, 16 rows or records. Do the math. 4 times 16 is 64. So there are 64 pieces of information in here. The last thing is you'll also notice that we have both numeric information in here and non-numeric information in here. Well, we've dealt with stuff being strings all semester. We've also talked about like an on-hand quantity that you see right there. That would be an int field, an integer, because it's a whole number. The unit price would be a decimal type of field. So you're going to see how to use those after the break today. All right. So please, if you haven't already done so, have a read of this stuff. Okay. Again, relational database uses tables to store and manipulate data, and typically more than one table. And you're able to relate information together based on multiple tables. All right, so you will see all of this as we keep moving on in here. All right, so how do they do this? How do they relate tables? Well, when you look right here, okay, notice we got a field here called invoice ID, and we've got a field here called invoice ID. Why is that important? If you have the same field in 2 different tables, like we have here, all right, then you are able to relate those 2 tables together. And you might say, well, that's fine. Why would you even want to do that? All right. Well, maybe my boss comes up and says, okay, what I want is I want you to give me all the invoices for customer, or all the invoices for customer 20 right there. All right. Well, let's see. I've got their invoice ID is 46 and I see an invoice date, but they might have more than one invoice. I don't know. So I need some information possibly from this table. So in other words, I can take my information and break it up into multiple tables. But to get the information that I actually need, I may need to do what's called join those two tables together. All right. This is all stuff that you're going to be learning in the upcoming days. Now, when you typically set this up, just so you know, all right, when you typically set this up, what you usually have are a table and another table like this, but you have usually what's called, you have a relationship between the tables. When you set up a relationship between the tables, there's three types of relationships you can set up. All right, I'm going to go back to what I've been showing you on here. All right, and those three types are a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many, and what's called a many-to-many relationship. I'm going to explain those to you. I won't expect you to totally understand them right now, which is totally fine. What you want ideally is you want all of your information in your database to be a one-to-many relationship. And that's actually what they show on the other page. We're going to look at it in a minute. When you've got a one-to-one relationship, imagine that I had a table, and I showed you this over here. All right, I'm not going to go back to this anymore and do anything, but imagine that we had first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, home phone, cell phone, the department you work for, who your supervisor is, what your salary is, etc. Let's say we had 20 or 30 different fields in here. After a while, it gets really unwieldy. It gets very hard to work with having that many fields. All right. So the reason I'm telling you that is you typically take a single table and you break it up into multiple tables, even though it's all information. So again, if there were 30 pieces of information about me, I could have one table that, for instance, might have my first name, my last name, my address, my city, my state, my zip, and my cell phone, let's say. All right, that's all personal information. All right. But then I might have another one that would have, let's say, my employee ID number. All right. The department I work for, my supervisor's name, and my salary. So notice that I've now taken and broken, let's pretend for a minute all that information was up here. Now I've broken it into two different tables. Maybe this one would be called, I don't know, maybe I would just call this one personal. Oh boy, what's going on here with this? So this would be personal, and this would be work. I don't know. Now, the problem with this, the way it currently stands, I don't have any fields in common. So I could decide that I wanted to take that employee ID and put it in this table also. The only reason for putting that table, that field in here, is so that I could relate these two tables together. But what I'm showing you is this is a one-to-one relationship. What I mean is, all right, for every one record that's in here, there is one and only one corresponding record in here. That's a one-to-one. What they show in the book here is what's called a one-to-many relationship. What is that? It's kind of like a parent-child relationship. And what I mean is, up here, these might be, for example, invoices, and these might be orders, all right, that you based off of those invoices. So this would be the parent, this would be the child. In a one-to-many relationship, every one of these invoices up here could have 0, 1, or more actually items ordered down here. All right. When you take a primary key of the one side of a one-to-many relationship and you add it, like we did here, we added invoice ID. If you add it to the many side, it's known as being a foreign key. And again, I don't expect these to totally make sense, and don't worry about memorizing it. You're going to see all this stuff. All right. But if you want more, you can read what's in here. The last type of relationship, I'm not going to show you. All right. And that's a many to many, because when you have a many to many relationship, that's not handled very well by a relational database management system like we'll be working with. Okay. If you've got that, you'll see it in a little bit. Then what you do is, rather than creating a relationship and dragging one field from another, etc., you end up creating a whole nother table. All right. And if that doesn't make sense, it will later when we take a look at it. All right. So how tables in a column are defined. We're going to go through most of this and then we'll take our break. Okay. Okay. So when you go through this, what type of data is what they're saying in here? So an ID number might be an integer, a customer number might be an integer, an invoice date would be a date time field. All these other ones are money fields. All right. So when you look in here, here are some of the common types that we're going to be looking at. And some of them may make sense. Notice there's not a Boolean. Rather, we create what's called a bit field. And if it has a value of 1, it's true. And if it has a value of 0, it's false. Then notice next that these things, they look weird. They're actually pronounced char, varchar, nchar, and nvarchar. A field that's a char field is a field that is fixed in length. For instance, if I asked you the abbreviation for any state in the union, it would be 2 letters. Missouri MO, for example, okay? So I would set that up as a char field of size 2 because it's fixed in length. On the other hand, if I set up a first name field, it could be as small as a couple letters if your name was Ed, and it could be as large as maybe 10 or 15 letters. So I would make that a varchar. The difference between a char and a varchar is a char is fixed length and a varchar is variable length. All right. We'll talk about the nchar and the nvarchar at another time. Then you'll see there is a date field, and there's different ways that you can do that. And the rest are all numeric fields. So as they mention here, the data type that's assigned basically to a column or field determines the type of information it can hold. And guess what? We've been doing this all semester ever since we came in and we started to write code that either we used if statements to make sure if something was numeric, you kept it numeric, or we used try catch, all right, or we even used a class. If you remember, we had our validator class. So we've been doing this kind of stuff. But now what we're saying is, rather than having it show on our screen or not show on our screen if we put in something that is invalid, now what we want to do, all right, is we want to make sure that before we put it into a database, that the data is valid. All right. Okay. Now they're going to work with their own database in here. We're not going to look at this today. All right. But they've got this MMA books database. And you see, this is a drawing of what a database would typically look like. All right. This is not the same as when we saw those UML drawings earlier, where we had in here the name of the class and etc. This is just the thing that's in bold here. Those are the names of the tables. So there is a customers table, an invoices table, a states table, an invoice line items table, an order options table, and a products table. All right. And each table has one or more fields in it. So for customers, it's customer ID and its name and its address and its city and its state and its zip code. In addition, every one of these tables has, and it doesn't have to be the first field in there, but it usually it is. It has a thing that has a key in there. That's the primary key. So each customer must have a unique customer ID. Each state must have a unique state code. Each product must have a unique product code. And you'll notice for invoice line items, it looks like you're like, well, they have two primary keys. No, that's called a composite or a concatenated primary key when it holds two fields like that. And again, I'm giving you the high level. If you want more, you can read what's in here if you want to. Also, you'll notice when you look here, it's kind of weird. There's a key here, and then it looks almost like a number 8 that's sideways. All right. And the one with the key on it is the one side. The one with the sideways 8 is the many side. These are all one-to-many relationships. What this says is any one customer can have 0 or 1 or more invoices. Every one invoice can hold 0, 1 or more invoice line items. Every invoice line item can hold 0, 1, or every product, etc. So we're talking about relationships in here. And that's what this whole thing is about. And that's what they talk about in here as well. All right. All right. So using SQL to work with a relational database, what we're going to be performing eventually is what are called CRUD operations. Now I'm going to go back to this probably for the last time, but I mentioned this stuff here before. All right. But in CRUD, we typically refer to it CRUD, and that stands for create, read, update, and delete. All right. In fact, the course that you take either this summer or next fall is a lot of it's a CRUD course where you learn how to insert, update, delete, and basically read information that's in the database. Now, when we do this, this is the syntax we'll use. And you'll notice kind of looks like what we just went over the other day, all right, when we went over our link, except with link, we had the from first and the select was on the bottom. Now we've got the select first. So this is the syntax that you see here. So what this says is I want you to go to the customers table. For each customer in there, I want you to give me their name and their city. But I only want you to do this when the city is equal to Washington. And then I want you to take the results and I want you to put them in ascending order based on name. You can see that right there. All right. And that's what they explain in here. Okay. If you want to show everything, let's imagine it here. So there was name, address, city, state, zip, etc. If you want to show everything, you don't have to list all of them out. You can say select star or asterisk. That means basically show me everything. All right. Eventually, we're going to have to get to the point where you want information and the information that you want is not all stored in the same table. All right. It'll have to come from 2 or even more tables. When you do that, what you have to do is do what's referred to as join the tables together to get the information you want. And there's several ways that you can join. The easiest way is what's referred to as an inner join. Now this looks pretty flippin' ugly right here, this thing right there. But that's got an inner join in it. But it's grabbing information from 2 different tables. All right. It is grabbing information from the products table. All right. And it's grabbing information from the invoice line items table. That's a join. In order to be able to do that in products and line items, there must be a field in common. And there is one. It's called product code. They each have a product code. This is the kind of stuff you're going to learn how to do. Now, you may be looking at it right now. I don't know where people stand in this class, but you may be looking at it like, I'll never understand this stuff. Once you start working with it, it's a lot easier than you'd probably think it would be. I'm not saying at all it's easy. I've gotten to the point where I don't say anything's easy. Something that's easy for me may be very hard for somebody else, and vice versa. but we're going to learn how to create insert, update, and delete. And we're going to do stuff like this. And again, don't worry about the syntax here, but here's an example of inserting something. So that would insert a record into a database. The product code would be C#. The description would be Murach, C#. The unit price would be $59.50. The on-hand quantity would be 3,000. All right. Here's how you update something. So what you're saying is, hey, I want to change the unit price to $54, but only if the product code is MCCP. And here's how you delete something. All right. Again, we're going to go through all of this stuff and what all of it means. All right, it is 9:05. Let's come back at 9:15 and we're going to install a piece of software, and then we are going to bring into that piece of software the file that I sent you a little earlier. So see you at 9:15. All right, it is 9:15. I'm hoping you're back. And it's funny because what's on the screen right now, it says perspective, and I want to give you just a little bit of perspective. Many years ago, I taught at a technical college in Wisconsin, and we had two programs very similar to what we have here at Rankin. All right, one was called the Programmer Analyst Program. That's like the AWD program here. And the other one was called a Network Specialist Program, and that was kind of like the IT program. All right, so what does this have to do with anything and what is perspective? Well, let me tell you. I had a student who transferred into my program, and they transferred into my program from the IT or networking program. And we were talking one day, and I said, why did you transfer over? And I expected him to say, well, I decided I wanted to do hardware. I didn't want to do software. But his answer kind of surprised me. And he said the teacher that he had had for both of his classes in his first year, that whenever he asked the teacher a question, the teacher would say, it's in the book, look it up, or Google it. And literally the entire semester never answered a question for them. Now, as far as perspective goes, if any of you have any questions on this, I'll be happy to try to answer them. But that said, this is actually a really well-written chapter and probably the answer to most questions, not everyone, but probably the answer to most questions that you'd have about this is in the chapter. Now, let's say, fine, but I don't want to I read the chapter and I still have questions. I would strongly recommend then, and I'll show you this in just a second, but that you go out to the website w3schools.com. And I'm going to be referencing this website a lot next semester. And if I go out here and I go to tutorials, you'll notice there'll be one someplace in here that will talk about databases. All right. And so let's see. I know it's got to be in here someplace, but let's see. Do they have a MySQL? There it is. Learn SQL, learn MySQL. So you could start here and it'll talk about the major commands that are in here and everything else. And if you want to learn about a specific type of SQL, all right, the kind that we're going to be working on at first here, MySQL, you could go to the other one that was here under tutorials and do the Learn MySQL. There'll be a lot of redundancy between these two. So it's just w3schools.com. There's a story behind the W3. I'm not going to get into it with you right now. All right. Instead, what I'd like us to do is I'd like everybody, all right, when you're watching this thing, I'd like you to please go out to a website for me. That website, and I'll put it up on the screen so you can see it. And I'll put it out here bigger in just 1 second. All right. So if you would please go out to ApacheFriends.org, just like that, ApacheFriends.org. All right. We're going to download a piece of software from there momentarily. All right. So if you go out to ApacheFriends.org, and that's exactly what I typed in right here. If you go out there and you hit enter, all right, the product that we're about to download in just a minute, I wish you'd do it with me as opposed to going ahead, is called either XAMP or ZAMP, depending on what book you read or what video you watch. And it has a lot of stuff in it, including it has Apache, it has MariaDB, which is basically it's MySQL. It has PHP, which is a programming language, and we're not going to use that. And it has Perl, which is a programming language, and we're not going to use that. All right. Now, I had this loaded on my machine. You'll notice that the current version is 8.1, and I had 7 point something on mine, but I just removed it. I'm going to go through the whole process with you right now of installing this. When it does the install, it's going to add things to your system and it'll add some folders, etc. My install may look a little different than yours because one of the folders that it will be added for you, I asked it not to be removed when I did the old uninstall because I've got some stuff in there that I wanted to keep. All right, so I'm going to take for granted that all of you have a Windows machine. So we're going to choose this in a second. I do want to mention one last thing first, and that is there are a bunch of these. This one is called XAMPP or XAMPP. There's also one called WAMP, which means Windows, Apache, PHP, and Perl. There's another one called MAMP, which is for Mac, Apache, uh, MySQL, and etc. They're all basically do the same thing. And even the MAMP one that's supposedly for Mac and Apple has got a Windows component. But this is the one that I started using years ago, and it's the one that I'm going to continue to use. So when I click this, I'm going to do that in about 10 seconds. It's going to come down here, the bottom left-hand corner, because it's going to be putting it into my downloads. So go and click on this. All right. And what does it say? Because this changes all the time. So it says, awesome, your download will start automatically. All right, it says if it doesn't click here. Well, mine hasn't started yet. So I'm going to click where it says, oh, there it started. I don't even have to. All right. Now, it's 147 meg in size. Is that big? Well, it depends on the size of your machine, how much space you have on your machine, etc. We're just going to do a standard install, even though there's some stuff in here that we're not going to be needing. All right, so I'm going to try to make the install as simple for you as I possibly can. All right. Now, it says here it's got 4 minutes left, so it may take a while. That's probably my connection. Yours could be faster, yours could be slower. But I'm going to right mouse click on this and I'm going to choose open when done. And now I'm going to just sit there and wait. Now it says 5 minutes. It won't be that long. I know it won't. All right. When this comes up, it's going to look a little weird, for lack of better words. It's going to look a little weird. There's going to be what's called a control panel for it. I will explain to you what the control panel is. I will explain to you how to use the control panel. I will explain the buttons on the control panel that you should make sure you touch, click, and the ones you should keep off of. All right. And it's not, this isn't that big a thing. It's not going to hurt anything, etc. It shouldn't screw up anything on your system. I will tell you that it expects to run on a certain port, and I think it's 8080, but I could be wrong. The only reason I'm telling you this is once in a while, when I have a student try to install this, and I've had them do this for 10 years. All right, but once in a while, when I ask a student to install this, it'll come up with an error message. All right. And if it does, I recommend you just stop the install and start it again. I had a student who literally had to do it about 10 times before it finally took it. We never figured out what the problem was. All right. So it says it's still got 3 minutes, but what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to use what's called the MySQL or MySQL relational database management system. All right. And I want to show you quickly while this is still working. It says it's got 2 more minutes. But while this is still working, I'm going to go back to the email that I sent you today, which is right here. All right. Right there. And I'm going to grab that movies.zip file. 2K, it's not any size whatsoever. And I'm going to click down here and I'm going to choose download. So that's going to go quickly, a lot quicker than this is. It's going to go to my downloads folder. All right. I want to show you the file because I want to show you basically what we're going to be doing. So it's right here. The file's already been downloaded. That's how fast that one went. And it's called here movies one. Well, mine's movies one because I already had something else I did earlier that was called movies. But I'm going to change my name. You don't have to change the name of yours. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to make it movie because I don't think I have anything called movie. All right. And I'm going to unzip it. I want to show you what's inside of here while we're waiting for the rest of the stuff to finish up. All right. So I've got a thing. I now called it movie. And don't worry if none of this makes sense to you. Notice it's a file, or maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. but the extension on the end is .sql. This is going to be the first time, probably for most of you, if not all of you, you're going to see a database. This stuff, the software made. Don't worry about any of this stuff. All right? This is where we care. We're going to create a table. That table is going to be called Top 25 Movies. It will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields in it. A movie ID field, which will be an integer, and the biggest size can be 999999999. A title, which can be from 0 to 150 characters. A year made, which is a number. A running time, which is a number. A category, which is a variable length between 0 and 50 characters. And a rating that's got between 0 and 10 characters. And we'll talk about this stuff, just not right now. So this is creating the table, and this is filling that table with data. So what this is saying is the first one that we're entering here, I want it to have an ID of 1. The title of this movie is going to be Shawshank Redemption. All right. The year that it was made was 1994. Its running time was 142 minutes. Its category, it was a drama, and its rating was it's R-rated. So we're going to come in, and there's nothing you're going to have to do this other than click a few buttons. And then we're going to be able to start querying this database, asking it for information. That's what I'd like to do between now and 10:30 or so, just so you see it. All right, so it came up and it said here, it says important because an activated user account on your system, some functions of XAMPP are possibly restricted. It says with UAC, please avoid to install something like that. It's just giving you a warning message. So I'm going to click OK. All right. So now it comes up and it says, hey, this is what you got. All right. Welcome to XAMPP or XAMPP, the setup wizard. I'm going to click next. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in here we don't need. Just so you know, there's a bunch of stuff we don't need. If you're really to the point where, yeah, I don't really have much room on my system, etc. Okay, then what you can do if you want to, is you can uncheck a bunch of these. You don't need Mercury mail server. You don't need FileZilla. So we could uncheck both those. We don't need Perl. You do want PHP-MyAdmin. I don't know what Webalizer is, so you probably could use it. And we don't need fake sendmail. Those aren't really that big, so I'm just going to keep everything checked. All right, but if you're real hard up for disk space, you can remove some of those. So I'm just keeping everything checked here, and I'm clicking next. And it says, hey, I'm going to stick this right under your C drive, and I'm going to put it into a folder called XAMPP. And you might think, well, I'm going to move that. I want to put it under program files or whatever. The recommendation by the people who have created this product is that you leave it set to right there, and you let them put an XAMPP folder right under your C drive. So I'm going to click next. All right. And it says the selected folder is not empty. Please select a different folder. You won't get that. I am, because I already have a folder called XAMPP in there. So what I'm going to do, just so you can see what I'm doing here, is I'm going to come out here and I'm going to go to my C drive, and you'll notice I have a folder already called XAMPP, and it's got 2 folders in it. So I'm going to change the name of that folder. You won't have that, but I'm going to call mine XAMPP old, because it has some stuff in there that I've used for other classes that I might still want. So now this should work. I'm going to click next. It says the language, of course, English. And it says setup is now ready to begin installing. All right, on your computer. I'm going to click next again, and it's starting to go through the install process now. Grant, especially for you being the only one here, I'm hoping you're following along, and I'm not going too quickly.
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Again, depending on this, on your internet connection speed, etc. Mine looks like it's not fast, not slow, but it'll take a minute or two. I mean, I've done this already at Rankin where I'm literally connected to their network and it's done in about 10 seconds. I want to mention too, not just to you, but to everybody listening to this, that usually during each semester, about either every month or every other month, all right, we have something at Rankin that's called Shadow Attack. And what that is you can come in and view an instructor's class in action, so to speak. All right, if you want to do that. The reason I'm telling you that is I have a student who's going to be watching me talk to the computer tomorrow. All right. So if you hear me talking or you hear another person talking, that's what it's going to be. I have somebody who is signed up for the Shadow Attack. They know that it's an online class, but they just want to see the kind of material that's being presented. All right. So if you do hear something, I'm actually going into Rankin tomorrow. And if you hear that, that's what it's going to be. And as you can see, it's probably about almost 90% done. And again, if yours takes longer, don't worry about it. All right. I am going to go on right away, Grant, even if you're not done, but you'll be, believe me, you'll be able to catch up and you might even be ahead of me. All right. It's just finishing up now. It's adding the uninstaller. So when you want to get rid of it, and after this semester, people have asked, should I get rid of it at the end of the semester? I will tell you that's your call, but we do end up using it again in the third semester class. Not for a long time, but we do. So you can uninstall it and then reinstall it so you've got the freshest version. If you want to do that, that's up to you. All right. Says, do you want to start the control panel now? That's up to you, but I'm going to recommend you leave it checked so you can see what this is going to look like. So just click finish. And this is the X amp or the ZAMP control panel. You can make it bigger, but it doesn't really get bigger. So I'm just going to recommend that you keep it this size, but it's your call. All right. Two things as we get started here. The first thing is, and this is just my recommendation, do it or don't do it. It's your call. But if you look down in my list of all the stuff that I've got on the system that's way down on the bottom of my screen, one of them is this, so that you can see there is the XAMP control panel. I'm going to right mouse click on this and I'm going to choose pin to taskbar. So I've got it in there permanently. Okay. You don't have to do that, but that's what I'm going to do. Now, this is where the magic is going to be. All right. We've got to click three buttons. The first button, first of all, we're not going to do anything with FileZilla or Mercury or Tomcat. Those were some of the ones I said you could have unchecked. So if you did uncheck them, you might only have Apache and MySQL, which will make it easier for you. All right. But you always want to click these two buttons right here. These first two on the left, the two start buttons. When you click them, they should go from yellow to green. If they do that and they go to green, you're up and running. If you get any kind of an error message down here, that means that probably you already got something running on the port that it's trying to use. If that happens, all right, you can Google it to fix it, or you can send me an email. But I'm not going to lie to you. If you send me an email, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to Google it. All right. But if it all worked, then there's one more button to check to click. And it's not the first one, but the second one that says admin, the one that's by here. So the MySQL line, all right, you want to click the button that says admin, and it's going to start up a new package. And if yours looks something like this, that's good. Now it's called phpMyAdmin, but we're not using PHP. We're going to use this to be able to come in and create databases. All right. Now, can I ask you, Grant, because you're the only one online with me, have you been able to keep up? Are you behind, or what's the situation with you?
No, I'm on that page too now.
Okay, great. All right. Now, I don't want you to do this, but let's just imagine I was going to create a brand new database. All right. And I'm going to remove it right away, but I want to create a brand new database and I want to call it my first DB or something like that. Then you click new here and it says, what do you want to call it? All right. And you say like my first DB or whatever, and you click create. That's what you basically have to do. Now it's showing here that there are already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 databases that have been created already. Those are systems databases. The recommendation is leave them alone. Don't remove them. Don't open them. Don't look at the contents. Don't do anything. They're just system things. All right. Now, what we will eventually do is we'll come in here and we'll create our own database. We'll do that. All right. But what we're going to be able to do for today is bring in that database that we've already got. And I want to show you that. So again, let me go back here. I'm just minimizing this. I'm not closing anything. But this file that's in here, this thing that's called top25movies.sql, I unzipped it and now I'm copying it to my desktop. Doesn't have to be on the desktop, but that's where I copied it to. This is the same file I showed you before, but I want to bring it up now because there's a couple things I want to say about it. All right. We are going to do what's called import this file. We're going to import it right in, and it's going to be available to us in about two or 3 minutes. Now, the file, I actually created this database earlier, and rather than importing it like we're going to do, I exported it, which made the .sql file so we had something to start with. So when I exported it, it let us know that this is a phpMyAdmin. It was dumping the data in there. The version it's using, where phpMyAdmin is, the fact that I'm using my local machine, when I did it, the version of the server I'm using, the version of PHP I'm using, etc. Those are all comments. So if it starts with 2 dashes like that, they're database comments. All right. Then it's got a bunch of other stuff. These are system commands. I don't know exactly what they do. Not to be funny, I don't really care what they do. All right. Then we've got some more system commands in here as well. All right. Then it says, okay, we're going to create a database, and that database is going to be called Great Movies. And that database will have in it, you'll notice there's minuses here. It won't create the database for us. We'll have to create it. We're going to do that in about a minute. All right. But when we do that, then we're going to import this in. That will import in this table. And actually the stuff that's in here, these fields, their names, their types, etc., and whether or not they're null and whether or not they have defaults. This information that you see right here in lines 30 to 37, this is called the database schema. And earlier when I showed you this, all right, and we talked a little bit about this, the data definition language, those are schema commands. Once we bring the table in and we're working with a table in phpMyAdmin, we'll be working with DML commands. So the DDL, the data definition language, is this stuff that you see in gray here. The data manipulation stuff is this stuff that you see right here. All right. After we do that, we're going to come back and tell it, hey, we want a primary key. And we want to call it movie ID. Okay. And then we're going to tell it that we want it to auto increment. What does that mean? That means that when we come in and add new movies to it, we're not even going to have to put in a number like we're doing here. It'll automatically count for us. I'm just trying to be consistent here and show you everything that we're about to do. All right. So if you have not done so, please unzip that folder so you've got the .sql file. It's called top25movies.sql. Put it wherever you want. It can be your desktop. It can be somewhere else. It really and truly doesn't matter, but someplace where you can get to it in just a minute. And then, if you would please, go back in again into phpMyAdmin right here. All right. We are about to go in and create a database, but I want that database, I want to give it the same name, so I'm going to call it Great Movies. I want you to see something too before we do this. Hopefully you see these. These are called backticks, all right? Or they're called sometimes grave accents. And you notice they're all over the place. They're here, they're there, etc. Anywhere that they have these, they're not mandatory unless you do one thing. If I had said here, instead of rating, if I had said film rating and I put a space in there, then I need to have these backticks, is because if I take them out, all right, I'd get an error message right there because it wouldn't understand the blank space. But a lot of times these backticks are going to be put in for us automatically. And if they are, you can leave them there or you can remove them. All right. But we're going to come in and create, like I said right now, a database called Great Movies. Everything that we're going to create in here when we do the database, it'll all be lowercase. And we're going to run the two words together, GREATMOVIES. So I want you to please go out to here. All right. And if you haven't already done so, yours probably looks like this. Click the new link that's up here. I think you can also click databases and do it too. So either one. So again, you can either click here where it says new, and that'll bring you here, or you can click up above where it says databases. They'll both bring you to the same place. All right. And we're going to come in here, and in that database name, we're going to type in Great Movies. One word, GREATMOVIES, all in lowercase. All right. The next thing they're going to ask is what kind of what's referred to as collation do you want? And if you look here, there's a whole bunch of them. This one is English. So that's the one we want. So in just a second, we're going to click the create button. But before we do, I want to mention something to you. Let's say that you screwed this up, you spelled it wrong, or you screw up the database and you don't want it anymore. Well, when we click create, if we go back again and click this databases thing, now we're going to have another one in here that should be probably at the top because it looks like it puts them in alphabetic order that'll say Great Movies. And if you decide you don't want it anymore, all right, you can just basically click over here and you can remove it. All right, you can change privileges for it. There's a lot of stuff you can do. But if you put in Great Movies like this, just click create. And now, guess what? You've got a new database. We can see it here. Or if we go back again, and if I click the new button again, and I go to databases, you see that there it is. So we now have this Great Movies. Now, normally we would go in and we would start adding tables, and then we would go in and add records and fields, etc. We do that ourselves. I didn't want us to get so hung up on that stuff when we started that we'd have to do that. So what I want you to do is I want you to click and make sure this Great Movies thing right here is open. We're not going to create a new table. We're not going to do a darn thing with this, but I want this to be open. All right. And then after it's open, I want you to go up here and find the button that says import and click that button. All right. And it says file to import right there. Okay. And then it says choose file down here. Well, we want to click this button that says choose file. and we want to go out to wherever you saved that SQL file that I just showed you. Again, mine's on the desktop, my top 25 movies.sql. You can either double click it or single click it and choose open. And it should now say in here, top 25 movies.sql. All right. If you've done that, you're 90% of the way there. All right. Then come down to the bottom here. You'll have to scroll down, and there's a button here that says import. We're just going to keep all of the default actions here. So come down here and click import. And if you get something that looks like this, guess what? It worked. If you get an error message, you're going to have to let me know. All right. But if you follow the steps I showed you, it should work just fine. All right. And Grant, again, I'm hoping yours worked, and you've got a thing down here now that says top 25 movies.
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
all good.
All right. Then go ahead and click where it says top 25 movies. These are the movies that we just brought in. This is the information that's in that file. So each one of these movies has an ID. Each one of these movies has a title. Each one of these movies has a year made. Each one has a running time. Each one has a category, and each one has a rating. You'll also notice that if you want to go and let's say that I spelled Shawshank wrong, we could go in and edit it right now if we wanted to. We could make a copy of that record. I don't know why you'd want to do that, or we could delete it. All right. And you can do multiple ones at once, even if you want to do that. So this is, for the next couple days, this is the interface that we're going to be working with for the rest of this week. All right. What I just had you do was I had you import into here a single table. All right. Normally, when you go to the trouble of creating a database, you have multiple tables. All right. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you another, well, not Monday, I guess. I'm going to give you another file that you're going to import, and it's going to have 7 tables in it. Not because I want to play head games with you or anything, but I want to show you how you can relate information from different tables together. All right. And then on Tuesday of next week, we're going to start building our project. All right. You're not going to get any homework that says, hey, you have to go in and import this file, do this, do this. No. But what I want you to do, and I'm going to show you how I do this stuff. If you want to go and look through here at the different things that are in here, you might find a better way of doing some of the stuff than the way I do it. By no means. I like to think that I don't have an ego with this stuff. And by no means am I saying you should always do it the way I'm going to show you because it's the best way. I'm showing you the most intuitive way of doing it. So we're going to look at this information. The first thing I would like you to do, please, is up on top here. I'd like you to click where it says structure. All right. That is the schema of this database. This is the schema. This tells you, again, that we have 6 fields. It tells you the data type of each field. It tells you that it's set up as an auto increment in here. All right. And it's telling you, like I said, the data types that are in here. And some of them naturally put in a collation. Non-numeric fields put a collation. It basically says we're using English. Now, notice where it says null. All right. It's got no for the first 4. Null means if it says no for null, that means you can't leave that field empty. If you try to put in a new record and you leave the title or the year made or the running time empty, you're going to get an error. You actually can leave the ID field because it's auto increment, which means it'll automatically see what your highest one is, and it'll add 1 to it. Now, what we could have done, just so you know, and I'm not trying to confuse you here, but what we could have done is when we created this file, remember the file looks like this. I did not actually have to put those numbers in there. All right. I did not have to put those in. If I'd have left them off, it would have still worked. And it would have automatically put the 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. in. All right. I just did this because I wanted you to be able to see what it is we're doing. I didn't want there to be any surprises. But if I wanted to put in a new film, so let's say that I wanted to put a new film, and let me show it to you two ways. So I come in here and I do this, and I don't know, let's just say Return of the Jedi. I even had that one in there. I don't know, but let's just pretend I don't. And I do this, and I say it was in the year 1997. I don't know any of this stuff. So, and the running time was 153 minutes, and it's an action movie, and it's PG 13. All right. I wouldn't put that in here, but what I'm saying is I could actually go in and add something like this in PHP My Admin right now. And I'll show you how in just a bit. But what I want to get to you is if I left this off and did it like that, it should still work. It's just that it'll put the number in for me. So why did I put those numbers in? If I want to leave the numbers off, then here where it says movie ID, I have to remove that. Because this is what it's telling me here. It's saying I want to insert into a table by this name, and what I want is I want to put in an ID, then a title, then a year made, then a running time, then a category, and then a rating. And it's also telling me if I go up above that the ID must be an integer, that the title must be characters between 0 and 150, that the year made and the running time must both be integers, that the category must be 0 to 50 characters, that the rating must be 0 to 50 characters. All right. Now, the other stuff that's in here, just so you know, this engine is the type of database engine that's being used. And InnoDB is actually the name of one of the engines. It's the default engine, and it's the one that almost always when you work in here, you're going to use. It allows you to do things like set up foreign keys that I mentioned before and do some other stuff. Then the next thing is the character set. All right. And the character set basically, and you should know this already, that if I key into the database, if I key in here, for example, 1994, okay, that when I key that in, the computer only understands zeros and ones. So it's going to convert that 1994 into a series of zeros and ones. And it's going to do that using the UTF, which I think is like Universal Transformation Format or something like that. And it's going to be 8-bit. And I don't remember what the MB4 is. All right. So this is the schema. It says table structure, but really it's the schema. So it lets us know what our table is going to be named, the fact that we're creating a table. And you'll notice in here, you don't have to do this. This is a case insensitive language. Typically, what most developers do when they are working in here is they take keywords which appear in blue and they make them uppercase. They stand out already because they're blue. But if I took the word create there and instead of making it uppercase, if I removed it and typed in create like this, it's still in blue because that's still a key word. So you don't have to make it uppercase. It's just kind of a standard that people do it that way. All right. And you'll probably see me doing it that way most of the time. So we're creating a new table. This is its name. Again, these backticks are not mandatory unless you have a space in there. We're saying the ID is a whole number and it can't be null. But later on, we set it up anyway, down here someplace. I don't remember. Oh, here, the altering the table. We add auto increment to it. All right. Which means it'll automatically count for us. Then we got a title. Varchar, when you think varchar and char, just think string. Whereas a varchar can be a string, in this case, of 0 to 150 characters, And if it was a char that said 150, char is an exact number. All right. And that's pretty much it for what you see in here. Then this is the insert into is how you put information into a table. And as I mentioned before, there is a linkage here. Movie ID becomes 1. Title becomes Shawshank Redemption. Year made becomes 1994. Running time becomes 142. Category, which is off the screen right now, becomes drama. And rating, which is also off the screen right now, becomes R. Now you'll notice that, for example, this one has an NA. Well, this is a 65-year-old movie and it wasn't rated. So I put NA in there for not applicable. All right. And you'll see that we've got different kinds of categories: drama, crime, biography, Western, action, and some of them, I think I took it out. Some of them actually had more than one category. But to simplify it, I gave all of them just one category, whatever one was listed first. So hopefully you can look at the data that's in here and it at least makes some sense to you. So again, schema, all right, with create, all right. Again, DDL or data definition language command, all right. Insert into, DML. We're manipulating the data. This is schema. This is the data that's based off of that schema. All right. Then we come back in and we alter the table. Remember, create and alter two of those data definition language commands. We're saying, hey, add a primary key and it should be the movie ID. Then alter it again and take that ID, do not allow nulls, but auto increment it. All right. And I've got here auto increment equal 38. I'm not even sure what that's doing. I do remember when I in my life, I've lived really in 3 states. I was born in Wisconsin. I was in Illinois. I went from Wisconsin to Illinois, back to Wisconsin, back to Illinois a few times, and now I'm in Missouri. The reason I'm telling you that, though, is I remember when I first moved to Illinois, I was at a gas station and I was filling up the pump or from the pump, and there was a sign there that said checks must be have a check number of 500 or greater. All right, those of you who don't know what checks are, that's before we had debit cards, okay? The point is, what a lot of people did then was when they opened up a new checking account, rather than starting with number 1, they started with number 500. So that was their first check. Well, when you auto increment, you can also, this is not what this is doing, but you can give it a start value. So in other words, instead of the first movie being 1, if I wanted it to be 1001, I could tell it to start at 1000. All right. And there's some more correlation stuff. I'm not even sure what that's doing. All right. So I want you to come back into here. So what I've tried to do is I tried to give you a very lengthy, I guess, explanation on what schema was. We can go in here if we want. We can change these fields. So when you see the pencil here, that's change. We can drop one or more of these fields. There's ways that you can come in here and you can add more fields, etc. All right. So we've looked a little bit at browse, which actually showed us our data. We've looked at structure, which showed us our schema. And I'm going to look at the stuff in the other direction here first. This is triggers. We're not going to touch this. All right. A trigger is something that you can set up that automatically happens. What does that mean? Well, let's suppose I walk into a hardware store and I want to I want a 3/8 inch screw. All right. And I look in there and I notice I need 10 of them and there's only like 3 out there. So I go to the person working there and I say, hey, do you have any more of these? And they say, no, but some more have been ordered and they'll be in this afternoon. Well, what a trigger could do is it could constantly keep track if your database was linked up, for example, to your cash register system. And it could say, hey, when we've got less than a certain number of these in stock, trigger an order so we get more of them. All right, that's a lot more depth and breadth of coverage than we have time to go over. All right, then you've got tracking, and notice what it says there, track these data definition statements. What you can do when you track is you can see how long things are taking. We're not going to play with those either. We've got operations. Notice, because this is a kind of an important one, if you wanted to rename your table, you could do it here. If you wanted to change the type of engine you were doing, or the collation type, or this auto increment, you could change any of these. All right. Now I played around with this. My guess is with this auto increment being set to 38, I played around with this database in other classes, but my guess is if we put a new record in there, it's going to actually start with the first one that'll be in there will be either 38 or 39. It won't be 20, 25 or 26 like we'd think. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. All right. Then we've got privileges. Okay. And right now, what they're showing here is the username is root. That's you. Means you got permission to do anything in here. I'm going to recommend that you don't do anything with this. Don't even bring this up again. The import we've already done. If we wanted to export this back into an SQL file so we could send it to somebody or whatever, we could do that. Then we've got insert. And notice if we want, we can put in a new movie here. We don't have to put in an ID. All right, we should be able to leave it blank. We'll see in just a second. All right, but we can come into here and let's do this. So go ahead and click on insert, and we're going to put in something in here. All right. I don't know. This just came to mind for me. For a title, I'm going to put in The Ring. All right. For the year made, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in 2013. Oops. Click in here first. 2013. All right. For the running time, I'm going to say 160 minutes. For the category, I'm going to say horror. And for the rating, I'm going to put in R. All right. So I put all that stuff in. I did not put in an ID. It should still work, but my guess is the number that's going to go in will be 38 or 39, which is totally fine. All right. And I'm going to click go. Now it's letting me know this is the query that it ran. This is the query that it ran. I can make this bigger so you can see it better, but it's letting me know that it came in here. I'm going to put all these on their own line because I want you to see exactly what's happening. So it is letting me know that what it just did, all right, was it came in here and it did not put in an ID. For the title, it put in The Ring. For the year made, it put in 2013. For the running time, it put in 160. For the category, it put in horror. And for the rating, it put in R. The system wrote this command based on what I had picked out, what I put in myself. All right. And it says one row inserted at ID 38. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to highlight it all and I'm going to hit my delete key. I don't need it. All right. But I want you to now click your browse key or button. And it said you have unsaved changes. If you get that, just click OK. It's fine. But notice if I go down to the bottom, what's there? I have inserted my first record. Now, I want to make some changes to it. Okay. So I can come over to here and I can click edit and there's that stuff back again. So I could change it in there. Maybe I decided that rather than 2013, it was made in 2015 and the running time is actually 156 minutes and it is horror. All right. So, but we'll also call it The Ring 2, like that. All right. And then I'm going to come back down and click this go button again. And it let me know it did an update command. And it updated. It set title equal to ring 2. It set year made equal to 15. It set running time for 156, but only the one with an ID of 38. And if I go back and look now, it's now the ring 2. It's now 2015. It's now 156. So what I have shown you very simply is how we can go in and create a record, how we can go in and update a record. Now, if I don't want this anymore, I don't want ring 2, I can click delete here, and notice it does come up and it says this. And it says, this is the command that I'm about to put in here within the double quotes. It says, I'm about to delete from this table, all right, where the movie ID is 38. If I click cancel, if I click cancel right now, it'll cancel the operation, all right? And if I click OK, which is what I'm going to do, it's now gone. One row affected. It's letting me know, and if you look down here, it's no longer there. So now I have shown you how to quickly do an update, how to do a delete by either clicking the edit or the delete button here. Well, what if I don't want to do it there? What if I want to delete something, but I want to delete it myself? That's where this one here comes in. I don't think we talked about search, but it says here you can do, I've never used this, all right? But you can actually put stuff in here to make your search easier. I like to do it all from the SQL window, all right? So I'm going to do this, and it comes up with a command in here for me. I'm just going to remove that command, all right? And I'm going to put it back in right now. But I want to select everything that's in every field in every record. So I can say select star from top 25 movies. Now, you may or may not have noticed, first of all, if you want to, you can put each one of these on their own line. Select star from, all right? And you notice I'm getting errors right now when I do this. So if I type in select and I hit enter, I get that red dot. And it's telling me select what? That's what it's telling me. And over on the side here, it shows me all of the fields that I have in here. So if I don't remember what they are. But if I say star and hit enter, it again. If I try to run this now, it's not going to work because just select star. It's got it from what? Normally, you'll put this all on one line. So select star from top 25 movies. Or what some people do is they say the select star and they put the from on its own line. It doesn't matter. All right. But if I put all that in there and I go down to here, there will be a go button. If I click on go, lo and behold, there's my 25 or 24, whatever it is, movies again. All right. So let's talk about what we can do with these movies. All right. Well, I'm going to show you, we're going to write some queries right now. All right. I'll go till about 10:15. Then we'll take a break. All right. So first of all, let's find all the movies that have an ID of greater than 10. So in other words, it should skip all of these right there, and it should only show me these. Now, why would you want to do that? I don't know. I'm just trying to show you some examples. Now, if you click show query box, it remembers your last query when you run this. So this is the one that we just ran. You don't have to run it again. But if instead of clicking show query box, you click SQL, come on, all right, you can bring it up that way too. I don't want this anymore. So I'm going to say now, select star from top 25 movies, but I'm going to say where the movie ID is greater than 10. All right. So where allows you to bring in what's referred to as criteria. If I left this off, it would work, but it would give me all those movies. I don't want the ones with a movie ID of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. So let's see if that worked. I'm going to go down to here and I'm going to click the go button. And you'll notice there's my data, and notice it starts with 11. All right. Again, not this is nothing where you're going to be, oh my gosh, is this cool? But I'm trying to just show you some of the things that you can do here. Now, I'm not going to do this, but I could have put in here less than 10 and it would have shown me the first, or I could say less than or equal to, or I can just say equal to 10, which will only show me that movie. All right, so if I go and do that and click go, I only get one record back. 10 was The Godfather Part 2. All right, so just so you can see these, let's write a couple more. All right, now you might think I can do something like this. Okay, we got that movie Shawshank Redemption, right? So let's say select star from top movies, and I'm going to say where title equal Shawshank. And I can virtually guarantee it's going to come back with nothing. Click go. I don't know why I didn't take it, but it didn't. So come on. Click go. There we go. It comes back with nothing. Just the headings. Why didn't that work? Because there is no movie called Shawshank. There is a movie called The Shawshank Redemption. So if I put the whole thing in and spell it right, and I put in The Shawshank, oops, sorry about that. The Shawshank Redemption. Now, if I click that and click go, now it shows it. But if I'd done that again and spelled anything wrong, I left the N off of redemption and run it, finds nothing. All right. Well, can I make that easier for myself? For instance, what if I wanted any movie? What if I wanted any movie that has the word the in it someplace? Any place in it. Can be at the beginning, can be at the end. But it has the letters THE. Then what I can do is I don't want to just type in the, because that's looking for an exact match. All right. But I can say, instead of equal, I can say like, L-I-K-E, if I could spell, L-I-K-E, and I'm going to say percent sign, the percent sign. The percent sign is a wildcard character, which means 0 or more characters. All right. And like means I'm doing pattern matching. So I've got select star from top 25 movies where title like the. And if I click it now, well, notice I get The Shawshank Redemption, The Godfather, well, in here, there's the, and the. All right. In much the same way, I could go back and say, hey, I want to just see movies that I could take my kids to, let's say. All right. Well, my kids are in their 30s or 20s, so that wouldn't matter. But I'm going to change this to where rating equal, and let's just say I wanted to use PG. All right. I think that's what it was a PG, but we're going to find out right now. And you'll notice there's 5 or 6 of them, I guess. All right. So what I'm trying to get across to you is how you can sit there and you can take a repository of data, which is what a database is, and you can mine information from it. All right. So what if I wanted to do this and I wanted to do it where category, equals action. All right. You'll notice that I've got 7, 8, 9, whatever this is, but they're all action movies. What if I wanted action movies, but I only wanted PG action movies? All right. Or, let's just look at that. So where category equals action, and I can say and rating equal EG. Now I need to put these fields like that are shown there in quotes and use single quotes, not double quotes. All right. But I do that because those are fields that hold string values. So let's see what this did. Now it's down to 3, but notice action PG for all 3. All right. Now, is there another way of doing this? Because what I could do is I could type in this. This is going to be an ugly query. I could say where category equal action and rating equal PG. So I could do it like this. And I could put, let's see, I'm going to put this in parentheses, this whole thing. So where category equal action and rating equal PG. So I'm going to put the whole thing in parentheses. In fact, I'll even put this on its own line. So it really stands out there. There we go. And then I can say, or category equal action and rating equal PG dash 13. As you'd probably guess, this is going to bring in some more movies because the rating can either be PG or it can be PG-13. All right. So with all that in there, let's again click the go button. And you'll notice now it included 2 more movies in here. They're all action movies, but it included the 2 Lord of the Rings movies that are both PG-13. All right. So let me go back up. And you might say, you know what? Isn't there a better way of writing it than that? Because I mean, I could see where this would get real long. You can't say like category equal PG and rating equal PG or PG-13. You can't do it like that. I'm going to leave this one up there for a minute, but I'm going to retype it in a little better way. So I'm going to say select star from top 25 movies. It's giving me this error right now on the screen, and it's giving it to me because it says you already have a query in here. So I'm going to remove that, and then this dot will go away. It even says this type of clause was already used. All right, but that's fine. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say where category in, and I'm going to put in here, well, let's say that with this one, we want action or we want horror, something like that. I don't know. In fact, not even action. We'll say drama. All right. So I can say the category is either here action, which you better spell right, or it's drama, all right, and the rating is in, so it's either, oops, PG, or PG-13. What I'm showing you here, not trying to waste my time or yours, let me get rid of this so that error goes away. All right. But when you use in, you can make a list of things. And I've got 2 different in statements in here. All right. So if I go and click go again, notice what we get back. All of them are either PG or PG-13. 1 or 3 of them are also dramas. So you could put anything you wanted in here. All right. If all I want is movies that are rated R, then I could just say we're rating equal and I can do a match R, and I can do either upper or lower case there. Now running that, That's only giving me the R-rated movies that are in here. Well, what if they are, but I only want to see the R-rated movies that are crime movies? All right. So I can come back in here and say we're rating equal R and category equal crime. So when I do an and like this, they have to both be true. All right. So I want both of those to be true. Okay. So I can click go and there's crime and they're R rated. If I change this, so instead of saying and I say or, then I'm asking for any movie rated R, regardless of its category, or any crime movie, regardless of its rating. All right, so if I bring that in, I think we had three that came up before. And now we've got quite a few more. All the R-rated ones and all of the crime ones. So hopefully what you're starting to see from this is some of the power in this. All right. So I think actually that's probably enough for today. But what I'm going to do, I will send this out. These are my jobs to do this weekend, just so you know. First thing that I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to make an extra video on how you can use this Mobilize product so that you'll all be able to go out and create your portfolio. Then I'm going to have to make another video on how you can save that portfolio out to GitHub pages where anybody can see it that you give access to if they know the path to it. I'm going to have to do those. Then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple little worksheet. You don't have to do it. You don't have to turn it in if you do it. But I'll put about 10 to 25 queries in here based on what we've got right here. And I'll send that out to you. And then what you can do is you can try them if you get the chance. And I'm going to say, well, person X says I wanted to do it, but I was really busy this weekend. Then what I'll do on Monday, first thing, is I'll go over the answers to all 10 of these. All right. Or 25 or whatever I come up with. All right. So what I'm saying is I want you to start to develop at least a little bit of a comfort level with these. Now, one last thing before we go, I want to show you, but I got to remember where it is. So give me a second here. It won't take long. On Monday, after we get done going over those, all right, then I'm going to give you another SQL file. Let's see. I want products. Yeah, this one will work. All right, let's open the location. All right. I am going to give you another one. When I say another one, I'm going to give you another file in here that we're going to be working on next week. And if you look in here, this will be the schema. So we're going to have like 7 tables. You're like, oh my God, we're going from 1 table to 7? Yeah. Don't worry about it because the project that we're going to do, we're only going to have 2 tables. But I want to show you everything you can do with this. That's what I'm trying to get across. Okay. So we'll have a categories table, a customers table, an employees table, a products and a vendors table, etc. And I'm going to show you, we're going to bring those in as well. All right. Now, when I give you this worksheet that I'm going to create very soon, but when I give this to you, all right, I am going to ask you to try to do different operations. What we've done in here for the last 10 or 15 minutes have all been select operations. When you do a select, you're viewing the data, but you cannot change the data that's in a query when you use a select statement. You cannot. It is not possible. You can show it in any way you want. So if all I wanted in here from these top movies, I don't even need this. So if all I wanted in there were just the titles, instead of saying select star, I could say select title from top 25 movies and click go. And then I get only the titles. All right. The reason I'm mentioning this to you is I am going to ask you to do both selects where you don't change the data and the other operations. I already showed you ways that you could come in and you could do an insert. I showed you that one, and how you could do an update. How I will ask you to do that one, and I'll ask you to put in a couple more records, and then ask you to modify them, and then ask you to delete one of them. All right. Why? Because we're going through the major types of operations that you're going to end up performing on this stuff. All right. And then hopefully by Tuesday of next week, and if not Tuesday, it'll be Wednesday at the latest, but I'm hoping Tuesday of next week, we're going to start on the project. And we're going to do this, and I'm going to try to incorporate as much of the stuff that we've been using all semester as possible. All right, we are going to use a class library, even though mine didn't work the other day. We'll get it to work. We're going to use classes, and we're going to have a splash page. And then we'll have another page that'll be a lot of different stuff in it. I'm still not sure. I'm in the middle of writing it right now, exactly what direction I want it to go into. All right, but we're going to do that. We're going to get it to a certain point. All right, we'll get most of it done, and it'll be totally operational. But I'll ask you to go and add some more stuff to it and kind of make it your own. All right. Again, I think I mentioned the other day, but I'm saying it again in case you didn't hear it or I didn't say it. And that is, it's going to be a music database, and it'll be based on the music of Garth Brooks. So what I did to grab a bunch of the information that we're going to use is I went out to wikipedia.org, and in here, come on, I literally came in and typed in Garth Brooks, and there he is. All right. And when you come down here, someplace in here, it had the discography. So these are all of the regular albums he has. I didn't use his film stuff. I didn't put in concert albums, etc. But he's got about 15 albums in here. I thought that was big enough that'd be something we could work with. And then I clicked on here. There's a picture of the album cover. So we're going to include that, but we don't actually need to save this. We'll be able to right mouse click on here and choose copy image address. All right, and we'll put that in as one of the fields in one of the tables that we have. We can put in the year it was released, and we'll have all the information about this particular album. That'll be in one table. All right. Then in the other table, because we're going to have two, is we will put the songs that were on that particular album. All right. So we'll make sure that I've already got the information. You're not going to have to key in all that stuff. I could make you do that, but it was a pain in the butt to do it. So I'm just going to give it to you. But you're going to have the ability then to go in, and for any one of these, you'll be able to bring up an album, and then that'll come up in part of the screen. Then on the bottom of the screen, it'll show you all the singles that were in that album. You'll be able to modify either anything on an album except the ID. You'll be able to modify anything on one of the singles except the ID. But it'll give us a chance. It'll be big enough because I didn't want to do something that had just one table in it. And we'll be able to, if we need to join information from the two tables. All right. So for lack of better words, that's what you've got to look forward to. All right. And at first I was going to do it on Elvis, and then I just changed my mind. Elvis had about 25 albums. I started doing that. So I just went to this one. All right. Now, if you like this and you want to change it, let's say that you're a fan of, I don't know, another group, Beyonce, and you want to do it all on Beyonce, I could care less. You'll still be able to use everything that we've done, but you'll have to bring in your own data. All right. So we went over chapter 19 today. We went and we installed XAMPP. All right. And we brought in or imported in our own database. So we created the database name. So we created the database in PHPMyAdmin. Then we brought it up and we exported in from that SQL file. All right. The table called greatest 25 movies or whatever the heck, or no, the database was greatest movies. And I think the table was top 25 movies or something like that, even though somehow I lost one and it's 24 now, but it doesn't matter. All right. Then we ran a bunch of queries so you could start understanding and seeing everything that was involved when you do query manipulation. So my question for you, and Grant, you're the only one here, is there anything that we've gone over today that you need any clarification on?
Not right now, no. I think just
Okay.
some more lectures
All
over the
right.
next few days will
Okay.
really.
And again, for the rest of you, if you tried doing something and it didn't work, it's going to be your responsibility to get a hold of me and let me know. I will tell you, this PHPMyAdmin that I've just showed you, the PHPMyAdmin, which is there is something equivalent to it in Microsoft's SQL Server. I don't think it's as easy to use. We may end up doing that too. I'd rather have us do this as an SQL Server database because that's meant to actually work with Visual Studio. You can get it to work fine with MySQL, but that's not what it was designed to do. We'll see how this works. All right. But that's what you've got to look forward to. So again, last thing, I've said this, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to keep beating on this same drum, that if something is not working for you, if you can't access something, if something just doesn't work, if you try following instructions I've given you in the videos and it doesn't work, the best thing that you can do is to email me immediately. If you're getting a weird error message, then hit your print screen key. Like if I got an error message right here, I could hit my print screen key that's up at the top of my keyboard, and I could save that as a paint file, a ping file or whatever, and then just email it to me. All right. Again, I've said this kind of thing before. If you don't do that, all right, there's no way I can look at the error and try to help you figure out what it is. The best thing you can do is try to Google the error, see if you can solve it yourselves. But if you can't, that's one of the reasons that I'm here. All right. All right. So with that said, again, in fact, what did we say? We said tomorrow we are going to be going over more examples. So we will bring in tomorrow, we will bring in the other database that I showed you before. So I will make sure that by tomorrow, well, by the end of the day today, I'll have written this worksheet with some queries on it. It might not be till later because I'm gonna when we finish now, I'm gonna prepare some stuff for my afternoon class. All right, but I'll try to get it out by sometime before this evening. All right. So with that said, I will talk to you tomorrow. Again, I will be presenting tomorrow from inside of Rankin in a conference room in Rankin because they don't have a classroom for me. And there will be at least one other student and possibly, or one student there and possibly two. All right. Until then, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.